Well, Dustin Hoffman, a funny thing seems to have happened to you on the way to taking Death of a Salesman from stage to television. Somewhere along the line, you plummeted to stardom. That's your quote. I love it. I'm not sure I understand it. Would you explain that before we get any further into this?
Well, I was a young actor at one time when I came to New York to study acting for the theater, to be an actor in the theater in 1958. And after years of unemployment, but nevertheless playing scenes in class from great plays, I became a so-called star overnight with The Graduate 10 years later in 1968. And I was aware of the fact about a year after that, I guess when I said that in an interview, that I had plummeted to stardom, meant that suddenly one is a star now, but the roles that you're going to see are movie star roles, or just,
mixed blessing, in short.
Yeah, you're not going to get the same parts that you were hoping to get in the theater.
And of course, so many know you primarily as a movie star, but your involvement not only with theater, but with Death of a Salesman precedes your years in the movies, and I'm wondering how you personally see yourself as an actor. Is it in cinematic terms or more traditionally theatrical ones?
Well, first and foremost, a sex symbol.
Why not? I did leave that out, didn't I?
The camera's shaking because the operator's having a coughing. Listen, I think everyone who becomes, not everyone, but I would guess that the majority of people that become actors want to be movie stars. I think that the majority of people who go into politics as a congressman really want to be president. But I was told at a very early age not to bother about my fantasy. Go to New York, study acting. If you're lucky, you'll get parts for the rest of your life as a character actor playing subsidiary roles off Broadway or something. And I was really content with that, as most actors would be. If we could work constantly, that's success. Actors can't practice their craft unless they're employed. That's different from, I think, any other art form. As a matter of fact, I roomed at various times in the late 50s with Bob Duvall and Gene Hackman, and we had parties with the bongo drums and the wine bottles with the candle in them, and Bobby would play guitar, hoping to meet a girl that way, and I would play piano. And if anyone was to ever to say to us, you guys are going to be movie stars in 6 months or a year, we would have laughed at them, because the three of us shared one thing in common, and that was that we never thought we had a chance.
Consistent with all of this seems to be the fact that on the dressing room door for Death of a Salesman was the name David Singleman.
Dave.
Dustin Hoffman.
Dave Singleman.
So maybe you should explain what kind of orientation that kept you with throughout the play. Why Dave Singleman on your door?
Dave Singleman is Willy Loman's hero, and in the play, in the second act, in the famous tape recorder scene, he's trying to show Howard, the man who employs him, how important selling is to him, and he talks about his hero, Dave Singleman, who's a man who was 84 years old and who worked actively as a salesman. He went up to his hotel room. I'll do the whole speech.
Oh, I love it.
To put on his green velvet slippers. He says, I'll never forget, picked up the phone and called the buyers, and without ever leaving his room at the age of 84, he made his living. And
the American dream.
Yes, and certainly the actor's dream, to make your living, to just make your living. I think, yeah, the American dream, certainly, more than being a millionaire, is to make your living during your whole life doing what you love. I think.
To be loved. And this brings me to the next question. In Kansas City, we're proud to have Professor Ying, who took Death of a Salesman with Arthur Miller to China. And echoing his question to you is, if Willy Loman is an everyman...
Somebody's giving you the finger, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
If Willy Loman is an everyman, how is he an everyman to an actor? Is there something about the actor's profession that is like what Willy Loman does as a salesman?
I think your question's on a button, because Arthur once said to me, when we talked about the fact that he never mentioned in the play what Willy was selling, and finally he said to me, he's really selling himself. And he says, the truth of the matter is, I was 32 years old when I wrote this play, and I didn't know anything about selling, really, but I knew about actors. And In the Requiem, which is the funeral of Willie at the end of the play, Charlie, the next-door neighbor, has that famous speech in which he says, "Nobody das't blame this man. A salesman's got to dream. Boy, it comes with the territory. When you get a spot on your tie, boy, that's an earthquake." That's an actor that he's really talking about. And an actor is really the heart of Willy Loman. He is really no different than the great performance by Olivier as the entertainer. Willy Loman is selling himself, just as we all are selling ourselves. When you said not only to do what you love, but to be loved, and that's, I think, what we want.
There's a man at the theater that I know you admire, John Gassner, and he has characterized Willy Loman as belonging to a, quote, aristocracy of passionate souls. What does that line mean to you?
The first thing that comes to mind is that the critics of Death of a Salesman contended when it came out that it was not a great play, it was not a great tragedy, because Willy Loman was not a real tragic hero, because he was not an aristocrat, because he was not a king, and you cannot have a tragedy about a common, so-called common man. And this is what Arthur was, I think, vehemently and passionately writing in opposition to. You don't have to be Richard III. You don't have to be Henry V. There is an aristocracy of human beings by the mere virtue of the passion they have for life. And Willie is nothing if not a man who feels very passionately about life. So I'm guessing that's what he...
And I'm passionate about getting a couple extra seconds to ask you about a line in Death of a Salesman
Do
that
it.
has haunted me since I had first read
Do
it.
it. Don't pay any attention to him. He knows that ulcers come with the territory.
The woods are burning, you say.
Yes.
Many times.
Yes.
The woods are burning.
Yeah. Well, he wrote the play. He was 32 years old when he wrote the play in 1949, and what Willie is saying to his son when he says the woods are burning, he means that there's not much time left, but it's metaphorical, I guess, and especially true today when we're living in a time when the woods are, if not burning, threatening to burn. And I do think that when you do a play, Olivier once said to me when we worked together in a film, far removed from Shakespeare and Marathon Man, but we were talking about Shakespeare, and he said, if you ever do Shakespeare, you must make it relevant today. Well, Arthur Miller is our American 20th century Shakespeare, certainly one of them, with Williams and O'Neill and Tibbetts. And one of the things we felt about doing the play when we did it on Broadway last year, as though it was written in 1949, we did it in that period, and the audience seemed to react to it as if it had been written today. And when you're not alone when you quote these lines, the woods are burning, and
Don't throw away the peel after you've eaten
yeah,
the orange.
and I'm not a dime a dozen. I mean, Arthur loved it most during I think the Saturday matinees and the Sunday matinees, when the busloads of 13 and 14 and 15-year-old kids came to see the play, who were not even born when he was writing this play, and just sat mesmerized and moved by it, that emotionally it reverberated, you know.
Meantime, our demise is approaching. Tape time is out.
Thank you
so much.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.